Good morning, everyone. This is Charles Folkart. It's January 23rd. As you can see, it's 5:20 a.m. Welcome, everyone. It's warmed up here in Kalispell, and it's supposed to get a little bit warmer. We got 28 degrees outside. It's a little warmer inside here, but that's a good thing. There's so much here I want to share in this video. Not too long ago in one of my videos, maybe even two of them, I said that I had seen a what we call an UFO, and I was at St. Mary's in Glacier National Park, Montana, here in Montana, and that's at a 4,500 foot elevation. And it was a clear morning. I got up to relieve myself at about 3:30, maybe 3:45 a.m. and it was in mid to late August in 2010. And what I saw when I looked up in the sky is I saw two orbs, and the reason I saw them is there was a tree branch, and I was looking up through this tree branch. I was laying on a air mattress outside, and it was a beautiful morning, clear, and at that high elevation, and there was no lights, smog, or any of that, so you could see for a long way, and it was clear out. And I saw a flash of lights, and I was looking up, and what it was, this orb went over here to this corner, and this orb here at the bottom went up at the same time, and they met right there, and they were there for a few seconds each, and then they zoomed right back at a very, very high speed. They went right back to where they were here, and then they went right back up again, and they hovered there again at this corner, and then they went right back to where they were earlier, and they did that over and over again for, I don't know, it went on for quite a while. I remember I had a chance to, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And so they were there, and they did this over and over and over again, and then I remember them all of a sudden they were gone. So I wanted to tell you that again. I wanted to show you a picture for you to get a better idea. They were way, way up there in the sky. I don't know how many miles away, but they were up there. And this was hundreds, if not thousands of miles apart between this corner and here. Now, I told you all that because I want to bring you here to this video from Richie from Boston, and you can see I'm subscribed, and I've checked this email. I want them to send email only, and I just want to tell you that I'm not getting an email when any of the channels I'm subscribed to upload a new video. But I don't want to go into that too much further, but I left a comment here in explaining what had happened to me, or what I saw while I was in Montana back in August 2010. And I watched this last night, and this video is absolutely amazing. You've got to watch this, and it confirms what I've said. When I first learned from Dr. Stuart Crane about UFOs, I thought they were nukes. He thought they were nukes. They were powered by nukes. But now that I've gotten more information, I believe that they're powered by electromagnetism. And if you watch this video, and don't forget, you can speed it up and if you don't want to watch it at the normal speed. That'll get you through it quicker. So I'm going to pick through here, and I'm going to try to find the most pertinent parts to include in this video, and I think you will find it very interesting. At least I did.
1988, Mark's friend inadvertently gained access to a highly classified airshow where the featured hardware of the event was real flying saucers. They were really strange looking, but appeared functional and were named to suggest anti-gravity and reverse-engineered alien technology. An official presence stated they could travel faster than light. Despite their futuristic performance capabilities, these appeared to be stripped-down, road-worn working prototypes, which had seen practical operation for years. If this were the case, they were crude but tangible proof of concept for a staggering leap in aviation technology. They used extremely advanced electromagnetic or field propulsion, as opposed to solid or jet fuel, nuclear power, or any other commonly known conventional means. It also meant our government and at least one other major defense contractor, Lockheed Martin, had been developing and deploying functional systems along these lines for many years. To both McCandlish and Brad, who had been working professionally for some time within what they thought were the highest levels of aeronautical design, this odd system was a sucker punch from the future.
Apparently this had a really, really serious impact on Brad. He really seemed kind of stunned by what he had seen. On Brad, he really seemed kind of stunned by what he had seen. So I got together for lunch, and I was doing all these idea sketches of what he described to me about how the components related. And I had your stereotypical sort of lens-shaped flying saucer like you see in more modern movies and stuff. He said, "Oh no, this is real simple. It's flat on the bottom, sloping sides like a section taken out of a cone, a little edge, and then a dome on the top." He said the dome is actually the top half of a crew compartment. It's like a big ball. Pretty sure that was about 12 feet in diameter. There's a central column that goes down through the middle. There's like a flywheel thing on it that maybe 6 to 9 feet in diameter. There's 4 ejection seats that are all back to back on this central column above the flywheel type thing. And he says a bunch of oxygen tanks in there. They're all around the bottom. And he said the bottom is this huge capacitor array. It's probably maybe 12 to 14 inches thick. It's shaved off at an angle, and the edges look like it's been put on a big giant milling machine, and they milled off the edges at a 35-degree angle. He said there's a series of these plate capacitors. I said, well, do you think that this is functioning like the Beefrel-Brown effect, like these experiments were done back in the 60s with levitating things with electrostatic fields and stuff? He said, well, that may be it, but he says they told me. He said one of the things I saw was that it was using zero-point energy. It was using scalar energy. I said, really?
It's cool, huh? Zero-point energy. I save the best inventions for myself.
Well, I've been corresponding with Tom Bearden for about 8 years at that point. We talked many times, mailed letters back and forth, talked on the phone and things.
Okay, so what we have is we have a very strong argument that neither the scalar photon, that is the time-polarized photon, nor the longitudinal photon, which is over in free space, are individually observable. But if you somehow can combine the two, they are observable as instantaneous quantum potential.
So I had a sense of what zero-point energy was about. We want to talk about longitudinal waves and scalar waves and cyclotronic weapons and all this kind of stuff. And so I've been following this for a while, reading Tom Bearden's work and things. So I had a pretty good sense of what Brad was talking about, which he was a little surprised about, that I would know this already. So he opened up to me a little bit more and began telling me more and more about it. When Brad finally became frustrated with my questions, he sat down while we were in his office together, and he did this rough sketch, which I still have to this day, 22 years later.
And he just sat down, and right where we were sitting there at his table, he just kind of sketched out with an ink pen on a piece of legal-size white paper, and put some some handwritten call-outs around the edges that described the number of capacitor plates in each one of the little sections, that they were so wide at the end, and the crew compartment was definitely about 12 feet in diameter. Just kind of put all these things down as close as he could remember to the way they existed. And so I sat down with all this information, and I just began sort of drafting it out.
It was at this point Mark began putting his formidable skills as a conceptual illustrator to work in uncharted territory. Taking Brad's eyewitness account, detailed descriptions, and rough sketches of the ARV, McCandlish began refining aspects of the components his friend described and piecing together an ever more precise rendition of the craft. Over the course of the next few years, he generated a series of drawings, culminating in the Fluxliner cutaway blueprint, one of the most notorious images in the history of ufology, and the mysterious realm of black-budget aircraft.
I'm Jesse Ventura, and this is Conspiracy Theory.
This was called the Fluxliner.
This is probably the strangest one you've shown me yet. This actually flies?
It actually flies on the principles of high voltage electrical charge.
Well, this is something that I spent a lot of time reading up about so-called mercury turbine generators, or mercury vortex generators, described in some of these ancient Sumerian texts. And so I started looking at the possibility that there had to be some kind of circulation going on in the mercury itself. So that was the kind of thing that I visualized would be going on inside the chamber.
The central column has a number of components, a couple of counter-rotating cylinders. Sounds very much like the device that the Nazis were developing in the Mansalis mine in Poland towards the end of the Second World War. There seems to be some evidence that they were trying to develop some kind of an anti-gravity propulsion system or a zero-point energy device.
Apparently, if we're talking about systems using components and processes similar to the ARV, we can't ignore the Nazis.
I think it was Timothy Good published this story, maybe above top secret, where he found a researcher who was following developments by the Nazis at the end of the Second World War, and it looked like they'd been developing flying saucers up in Poland, in the Marcellus line, and they had this thing that looked like Stonehenge, where they had all these high voltage cables coming into it, and these chains that would hold something down, and they had this thing called the bell, the Duskuloka.
The bell.
That was down in this mine in Marcellus, and that it involved a ceramic dome, and it had 2 cylinders inside with a mercury solution circulating. And the 2 cylinders were inside an electromagnetic field, and they were counter-rotating, and they had this mixture of mercury, thorium, and beryllium. Now, it looks like there's a high voltage electrical discharge that's being sent through the mercury, and that is somehow doing something that enables this anti-gravity effect to occur.
Besides rumors about Hitler's top scientists and the mythology of ancient kings.
So it creates kind of a positive and a negative aspect to the status of that zero-point energy that's surrounding the vehicle.
So just to kind of give a little background, the idea of a space warp works on the principle of expanding and contracting space in such a way that allows you to go somewhere very, very quickly.
What this does is it leads to something that was described by Alcubierre in his 1994 paper on warp drive, the creation of a warp drive that would not violate general relativity. And one of the things that he was suggesting was that you would be able to engineer a vector or a pair of vectors in space-time that would, on the one hand, cause a compression of space-time ahead of the vehicle and an expansion of space-time behind the vehicle, and that there would be an intervening space between those two phenomena that would pretty much peg your sense of gravity, your sense of inertia to the environment that you departed from when you initiated this movement.
So, in essence, what you have is you have a spherical event horizon around this particular region that might be called a dynamically engineered local space-time. And this particular region is set up in such a way that it creates these influences in the surrounding metric in such a way that it also creates a vector that goes in this direction. And so it's kind of like it's almost like having a black hole ahead of you and an expansion of space-time behind you. But the actual environmental conditions that you experience inside the spacecraft are pretty much pegged to the time and place that you start out from.
So you don't have any sense of g-forces or being moved around. You don't have any sense of acceleration, because the entire pocket of space-time that you're encapsulated in is being accelerated by the vectors that are created around the system. So it's uniformly accelerated. The space-time pocket that you've created, the vehicle itself, the crew, the cargo, everything is moved as one complete package. And so there's no sense of acceleration. But what it allows for, according to Alcubierre's calculations, is what he was calling an arbitrarily large speed, which suggests something in excess of the speed of light at superluminal speeds. So to the person that's inside the vehicle, it may appear that you begin to accelerate away from a particular location. But to the person who's standing outside the disturbed region of space-time, it looks as though you just were gone, just in an instant.
So this is an ARV, isn't that what it's called?
That's what some people call it. We call it RAM, Replication Alien Machine.
Oh, I see.
Many highly credible reports of UFOs share a few key descriptions of how these crafts behave. They appear to have the ability to accelerate to extremely high velocities at will, far faster than any man-made craft, as if the speed of light maybe isn't any big deal. They can stop on a dime and turn at random angles, while traveling at these crazy speeds, like the forces of mass and inertia, which would flatten anyone in a normal situation, also aren't a problem. And they're silent, without any visible rockets, jets, or exhaust of any kind, like they're pulling the energy they use out of thin air. Superluminal speed, mass cancelling, and ambient field propulsion. All apparently standard in the mid-80s model Fluxliner. This makes the ARV a seriously badass means of getting around, and kind of a missing link between Roswell and one of these.
The material-free environment that had this energy that was embedded in it, almost like a fluid in a way, that it had all of this potential that you couldn't see until you found a way of driving it out of this homogeneous sort of state of equilibrium and getting to do usable work. I'm trying to remember exactly how I met Tom. I know we met at a UFO Congress in Laughlin, Nevada for the first time. We'd been corresponding for quite a while.
Now, what is zero-point energy? I'm going to show you many different definitions, but let me quote Nikola Tesla. In 1891, the world's greatest electrical futurist, Nikola Tesla, stated, quote, "Throughout space, there is energy. Is this energy static or kinetic? If static, our hopes are in vain. If kinetic, and we know for certain it is, then it is a mere question of time when men will succeed in attaching their machinery to the very wheelwork of nature. Many generations may pass, but in time our machinery will be driven by a power obtainable at any point in the universe." And so there, ladies and gentlemen, is the basic birth of the concept of zero-point energy.
The real issue becomes, is this new technology something that's so advanced and so far out there that it's really beyond the scope of our modern civilization? Is it something that's so hard to achieve that it requires such a tremendous amount of development that it would cause the economy to collapse? Or is it a real threat to existing forms of energy like oil, coal, nuclear, wind power?
By the mid-50s, they knew that this would be the end of the oil cartels and the international financial petrodollar system. And this is very important. It means that we, Homo sapiens, have the ability to access this so-called zero-point field of energy, which is the ambient field of energy from which all matter and energy is fluxing, and can access that energy and generate all the power we need to run this planet without fossil fuels or pollution.
This stuff really works? Certainly does. Oh, well, lots of luck.
Technologies connected to UFO and extraterrestrial vehicles, if declassified and used for peaceful energy generation and propulsion, would solve the looming energy crisis definitively, would end global warming, would correct the environmental challenges that the Earth is facing.
When I got involved with Dr. Greer and the Disclosure Project, I was very excited, and it was an opportunity to go to Washington and maybe have an opportunity to talk to some real-life politicians about what the potential of this technology might be. I was really hopeful that we would see some kind of a door open publicly, and that the government would show that it was willing to have a conversation, a dialogue about the technology.
Holy fuck! Oh my God! Oh my God!
September the 11th basically knocked May 9th off the radar permanently.
Well, 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 that certainly explains quite a bit. I think you'll agree, and if you don't, well, that's your problem. But that explains Operation Highjump, and you'll remember that that's when 4,000 military troops from U.S., Britain, and Australia in an invasion of Antarctica called Operation Highjump. This is a fact, and we all know that Admiral Byrd and his forces encountered heavy resistance to their Antarctica venture from flying saucers and had to call off the invasion. So it's highly probable that the Germans had these craft during the war, World War II, and that would help explain why so many of the German engineers and scientists, including Werner von Braun, were brought to the United States after World War II, and they began what we now know as the NASA space program. We've been lied to about everything. We've been lied to about World War II. We've been lied to, like I say, everything. Operation Paperclip brought quite a few of those engineers and scientists to the United States, and they launched the space program here in the U.S. And don't you find it interesting that when Nikola Tesla died, the government went into his apartment there, and they confiscated all his research papers. Mr. Morgan, J.P. Morgan, and those with eyes to see and ears to hear will know who he was. He did not want the technology that Nikola Tesla had researched, free energy, so they had to make sure that that information was not leaked to the public. And I also find it very interesting that the same people, the same group of criminals who tell us over and over and over again how evil them Nazis were, actually took those same evil Nazis, they brought them here to the United States, and they began the space program, which has been nothing but a lie ever since the beginning. These same people want us to believe in space. They want us to believe the Holocaust. They want us to believe how evil the Germans were. And look what's happening even to this day in Europe and especially in Germany. The German people have been browbeaten to such a point that their nation is being taken over by Muslim and Arab and African invaders, and the German people are hardly putting up a fight. This leads me to believe that these people are going to have to make their move pretty quick, and they're going to say there's aliens from outer space, and most people are so stupid they're going to buy into it. They've been so brainwashed and so programmed that they're going to believe what they're told. And another thing I want to mention here is I'm sick and tired of the shills. Everywhere you go, when you go on a channel or a video that has something to do with the flat earth, you've got these pretend name shills who their job is to make things confusing for people, and they just repeat the same idiotic mantras, parroting what they've been told, or they have their script, and they just go on and on calling everyone else who doesn't believe these lies anymore. It's us who are the idiots. It's us who are the wackos, etc. And how much longer before, like those who don't believe in the Holocaust, those of us who don't buy into the space program any longer, we don't buy into their lies, how much longer is it going to be before we are going to be put in prison? I've already had people on a few of the sites I go to, and a few of the comments I've made told me that I belong in prison. So it's getting closer and closer to that point every day, and we certainly live in interesting times, and I would encourage you to watch that entire video. And there's another man you might want to watch also. You might want to come here and watch this video. This man has a book out. I ordered the book. It's on the way, and I'll be reporting in the future on his book, The Secrets of Anti-Gravity Propulsion. And now that I'm thinking about it, that also explains how ISIS, I'm sorry, I always say ISIS, it's ISS. They're almost the same anyway, aren't they? It's all a bunch of lies. ISS, the International Space Station, is able to fake like they're in space by using some form of anti-gravity device, using electromagnetism. And I've got several videos I've made on that subject. You might want to watch those. Well, as we begin to put the pieces together, it's all beginning to make sense. The entire picture puzzle is beginning to come in clear. We got a better understanding now of what's been going on, why we're being lied to. They've known about this energy for quite a few years, and they're keeping it a secret. And I think that's coming to an end. So we're gonna see something big here happen fairly soon. All the more reason for you to embrace the love of the truth. And may the grace of God, our Creator, Yahweh, may His grace be with us all, for we certainly need it. See ya.
Holy fuck! Oh my God! Oh my God!
September the 11th basically knocked May 9th off the radar, permanently.